guest speaker, Neil McQueen. He is an environmental consultant and co-chair of the Coastal Bend Surfrider Foundation. As a lifelong surfer, he deeply understands the need for clean environments to enjoy. Over the years, he has fought for public beach access, reducing single-use plastic, and more strict regulations and accountability for large polluters alongside Cape.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you to Jessica for inviting me to speak with you. And I thoroughly enjoyed the Shantae's version of Pipeline and Mr. Dude's story there. There's a lot of lighthearted fun in surfing. There really is, but there's also a lot of deep spirituality involved. I have been surfing since I was in high school. I started in Galveston in 1978. And I've been able to travel to many places around the world to go surfing and see many, many beautiful things in the oceans, and including all the creatures that you saw in Mr. Dude's story. And really feel part of the power and the awe of the planet and the forces much larger than me. And that song that the Shantae's played was Pipeline. Yesterday I was watching a live video footage of the North Shore of Hawaii, and the waves were 25 feet, and guys were trying to surf Pipeline, trying to get into the waves. And that, back in the day of that song, when that song came out, that was meant to convey the energy and everything and the danger, and it was very real yesterday. People were basically risking their lives trying to catch waves, so it was pretty neat. But anyway, the Surfrider Foundation, we're a national organization. We're actually in other countries as well. We have 50,000 members. I've been involved with the Surfrider Foundation as a volunteer since about 1990. You can see our mission statement up here is the Surfrider Foundation is dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean. They put ocean in one it's all one together. They're all intertied. Waves and beaches for all people through a powerful activist network. And that really does convey a lot of the things we do. We're having a Texas Chapters Conference. We have several chapters in Texas. We have chapters on the Great Lakes now, because there's people crazy enough to surf in the wintertime on the Great Lakes. Not all of us are surfers, but we have a meeting coming up, and we have the people from headquarters coming out next weekend, and we'll be talking about a lot of these things that you show there. You can see some of the things we work on: plastic pollution, ocean protection, beach access, public beach access, big deal in Texas. Coastal preservation and water quality, and everything kind of goes out from there. Let's see if I can get this right. Which button am I supposed to push here, Jessica? That one there? Okay, great. Where am I aiming it? Yeah, okay, so, there we go, okay. So I was asked to tie this into your principles, the Universalist Unitarian principles. And by the way, this is not my first time here ever. And many of the things that we do relate to several of your principles. We actually have a whole environmental justice push in the last several years in the Surfrider Foundation. We recognize that there are people that are affected by industry and other human actions much more so than us. And so you can see there's several things that kind of changed the color of the font there. But I would say that last one there that deals with protecting something that's nature, if you will, and the planet, and recognizing that we're all a part of that nature and the planet, and that what happens in one area of the planet affects everybody everywhere. The world's oceans, most of the planet is covered by the oceans. So our work, I think ties in mostly with that last principle. All right, so I'm just going to show you some of the things we do. One of the popular things we do is Make Promises Happen surf camp for our disabled friends. This is every July in Port Aransas. We take disabled people surfing. It started 25 years ago. The guy in the lower right photo there with the long hair, he's my fellow co-chair, Cliff Schlabach. And he and his wife and her family started this 25 years ago. It's a fantastic event. A lot of folks come down from Oklahoma, but we also have local folks, people with all kinds of disabilities. And it's a very joyful thing. We hope that we get them out there and let them feel the power and the fun of riding waves. And some of them do that sitting down, some of them do it standing up, and some do it lying down. And I don't know who has more fun by the end of the day. It's a really uplifting experience. And a lot of we call them campers, have been back many, many times. And they look forward to this all year long. So it's really a great time. So by the way, these slides are kind of shifted over. I did the presentation on a Mac, and so that's why we're getting differences between Mac and Microsoft. But so one of the campaigns I've led locally since 2010 is called Skip the Plastic. And nationally, Surfrider Foundation has a program called Rise Above Plastics, but we decided to call it Skip the Plastic here. And we started that program because of the amount of plastic pollution that we were seeing in beach cleanups all around the country. When I started surfing in the late 70s, you didn't see a whole lot of plastic trash on the shorelines. And it's everywhere now. It's literally everywhere. I sailed for years, years ago, and I would go to islands with no people on them whatsoever, and there would be a ring of plastics around the high tide line. We started this program. We do a lot of different things. This is just a statistic for you here. Years ago, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation came out with this finding that every year 8 million tons of plastics are dumped into the world's oceans, and that's the equivalent of one garbage truck per minute worldwide. Later estimates now put it closer to 13 million tons a year are going into the world's oceans. It's coming down rivers and everything like that. What ends up on a parking lot here can end up in the Gulf of Mexico very easily, or in our bay. And then that last part, I don't know if you can read that orange writing there. They predicted that if we don't change the way that we're doing things, that there will be more plastics than fish by weight in the world's oceans by 2050, which to me is a little alarming. Plastics are in the food chain, marine food chain. It's been proven here locally. Recently I saw a paper out of Matagorda Bay measuring how much plastics are in oysters versus redfish versus trout and versus black drum. People who like to eat seafood are also ingesting plastics. And it's really the more scientific studies that come out on plastics and microplastics and nanoplastics in our environment, the scarier it gets, frankly. And we are part of that environment, and we're not excluded from that, so we're getting affected by this also. These are all photos. Some of them a little bit old, but these are all photos of our situation here locally. And Judge Westergren might recognize that lower right photo there. So that's a great blue heron with a plastic bag hanging around its neck on the seawall right over here. So, that's not unusual that we've seen this stuff. And so over the years, we've had all kinds of different programs. We worked on plastic bag bans with the city. When Mayor Martinez was the mayor, Nelda Martinez, she pushed a bag ban really hard, which was a pretty gutsy thing to do in a city that's got a petrochemical economy. And we came very close in the city of Corpus Christi to getting a bag ban. We did succeed in getting one in Port Aransas. Rockport was very close. But what happened was I can't remember what year it was, 2017, the Texas Supreme Court struck down Laredo's bag ban. And then the state came after all the cities that had bans and said, if you guys don't cease and desist, we're going to sue you. So they all dropped their bans. So we shifted our focus at that point away from plastic bags. We still do education about that. We try to raise awareness about plastic pollution and how we can make a difference. We've recognized people who bring their plastic bag, or reusable bags, like this one here. When they go shopping, grocery shopping, it's a very easy thing to do. But now we recognize people monthly who are cleanup heroes. So some of those photos there showing from a little young guy to a veteran who's on the beach there in the morning. That's the guy in the morning photo at the beach. He does that every morning to basically save his sanity, right? After being a veteran from war. It's just, so, people are making a difference, and we're trying to show that individuals like ourselves, everybody can pitch into that solution. One of the programs we've partnered with is the Nurdle Patrol program. Hopefully you guys, some of you have heard about the Nurdle Patrol. Nurdles, that photo down there on the lower right that shows the little pellets that are lined up, all the different colors. When you make plastics, petrochemical facilities here in our bay and along the Texas coast take natural gas and convert them into plastics. And those pellets, those small pellets, they escape very easily in the storm water from the facilities and from the shipping process. So they get out of containers and ships and rail cars and things like that, and they're washed into the oceans all over the world. They resemble seeds or fish eggs, so animals readily eat them. They mistake them for food. And this guy that's shown in that kind of the upper right photo there, that's Jace Tunnell. Jace's dad was Wes Tunnell. He was one of the top scientists at the Heart Research Institute over here at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. He passed away from melanoma. But Jace is a fantastic guy, and he was working at UT Marine Science Institute in Port Aransas, and he's now at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So he started this program, and basically it's a citizen science project where people go out and they look for nurdles, and if you see them on the beach, you see how many you can find in that area within 10 minutes. And so the map there that you can see of our coastline shows the counts. Green is the smallest number in 10 minutes, purple is the largest. You'll see the purple concentrated up towards the Houston-Galveston area, the petrochemical complex in Galveston Bay. And then you can see another purple dot partway down the coast. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Let's see, we'll go back here. So right here, that is Formosa Plastics, which is in Lavaca Bay. But you can see that our whole coastline has a lot of nurdles everywhere. And so we've worked on some things, and check it out sometime, nurdlepatrol.org. It's a pretty fascinating map to see. And these are actual photos here. You can see the one there with the little red circles around the nurdles. That's at the high tide line on the beach. It's not unusual to find these nurdles on our coastline. And you can see they do resemble organic matter, so they're easily mistaken as food items. And that other photo there shows the discoloration due to weathering of those nurdles over time. So one of the things we've worked on as a result of that is a bill. Representative Hunter authored a bill for us in the Texas legislature a couple sessions ago, and Jason and I went up and spoke, and met with people and things like that. We didn't get very far. We actually did meet with the head of the State Environmental Agency, TCEQ, and his staff on that. Representative Hunter got us a big meeting with those guys, and we met with them for quite a while. As Jessica said, I am an environmental consultant. I have industrial clients in Texas that I represent to TCEQ. I've got to say I was not impressed with what we were told by the environmental agency on this issue, and we will continue. We've gotten later iterations of this bill, and then I worked with Sierra Club on another bill, really just trying to clarify some language regarding these plastic pellets, that TCEQ has the authority to regulate them, because the plastics industry says they don't, and they clearly do under the Clean Water Act. So stay tuned on this. We do a lot of beach and bay cleanups. We do the Adopt a Beach cleanups and some other ones. I frankly can't count how many beach cleanups I've done. I used to think they were good for people to see, firsthand how bad it is, but we weren't really accomplishing that much. And then recently there was some research that showed that plastic pollution stays largely in the first 10 miles of the shoreline of the world's oceans. It stays within 10 miles of the coastline and goes back and forth, much of it. So it gets deposited on the beach and then blown back off by the activity. Our coastal environment's a very dynamic place. You've got lots of different forces acting on it. So if we are taking it off the beach, then hopefully it can't get back out into the water. So we've cleaned up tons of plastic trash, and it is mostly plastic. I would say that 95% of what we pick up is plastic. Full disclosure, I was an engineer for a plastics company a long time ago, and we were making a product called polymer concrete, which was more like highway products and drainage products and things like that, meter boxes. And back then we thought that once plastic gets out in the environment, it's inert. It's just like a rock. Nothing doesn't interact with the environment. We were very wrong. I've kind of come full circle, if you will, in my understanding of that. The photos on the bottom there, we worked with the BAR lab, Marine Ecology Lab at Texas A&M Corpus Christi to do some cleanups along the bay, and that's a place not far from my house on the bay. And I don't know if you can see the difference between the before and after picture, but we picked up 280 pounds of plastic in maybe 2 hours. And of that 280 pounds, 45 pounds was styrofoam. So think about that, because styrofoam doesn't weigh very much. And 80 pounds was plastic bottles. So just some other things we've worked on. I'm a sailor, and we've had some huge sailing events here on the Corpus Christi Bay. You know, the wind blows hard here. It's a good place to sail. So we've had the Youth World Sailing Championships and U.S. sailing competitions here, and I've participated on the green teams for those events. The sailors understand the problem of plastic trash in the world's oceans, and so they've started pushing their own Clean Regattas program. And so we've done that, and a couple products that have come out of that on the bottom there. The first is a sustainability event plan. So if anybody's ever planning a large event in Corpus Christi, they can go to this resource. If you ever need it, ask Jessica or me, or we'll get it to y'all. But it's how you could run a greener event overall, whether it's beach to bay or conference or anything like that. Years ago, I was asked to help make a conference green at the American Bank Center, and I was amazed at the amount of waste that one conference produces. It's just really tremendous. Then that other thing, those three pages there, that's like what you could use as a food vendor, say food truck events and things like that, to reduce single-use plastic. So as was mentioned in the Mr. Dude story, we've got the chasing arrows, the reduce, reuse, recycle. Hopefully every kindergartner knows that by now, but that's outdated. It really is outdated. So there really are 8 R's there. So on the first one is refuse. I don't need that straw. I don't need those utensils. I have my reusable utensil kit. I don't need that bag, kind of thing. But you really kind of rethink how we do things and repair things when possible. We're very much in a throwaway mentality society nowadays, right? If I buy something and I don't like it or it breaks, I take it back to Walmart, get another one. Well, what happens to that one that you took back? So anyway, it really is, it starts at the very start. Do I really even need this thing in the first place? I've traveled, like I said, to lots of different places. I've stayed with people who have dirt floors and sticks for walls, and I've seen what you really need. We have this perception that we need everything in America, and it's not really the case. So think about that. So a couple things on the horizon here, if you will. For the 3rd session in Congress, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act has been filed. It's gone through some changes. I don't think you guys can see any of that writing there, but there's about 6 bullets, including a moratorium on more plastic production plants would be one of them. But getting away from styrofoam, other changes. As we know, big bills, this is kind of like an omnibus bill, and so big bills are not really moving through Congress that much. So one of the things they broke out there is actually a bill about plastic nurdles, Plastic Pellet Act, trying to reduce the amount of the nurdle pollution. Then that newspaper article there was talking about last week, there was a meeting in Kenya. It was the 3rd meeting for a global plastic treaty under the UN. It's very challenging. It's kind of going through the same problems that the climate change conferences are going through. There's a lot of lobbyists from the oil and gas industry there, and a lot of countries that don't want to make changes because they like industry. Including the United States. The United States' approach on the Global Plastics Treaty is improving. So this is one place that maybe as citizens we can all push our elected officials toward more action on this. Another program we do is storm drain marking. We cooperate with the city's storm drain department, stormwater department, and we apply these markers. y'all might not know this, but the city has a permit, every city has a discharge permit for its storm drain system, for properly managing that storm drain system and limiting pollution that goes through that system and goes out into the water bodies. So we've applied these all near the downtown area. Jessica's done this. One summer, she and her fellow volunteers did all of Ennis Joslin from SBID to about Cole Park, right? Yep. So that was a great deal, and so we continue to do this when we can. There are 84 storm drain outfalls in our city that just go into Corpus Christi Bay. If you look at a map of Corpus Christi, we're really we're surrounded on 3 sides by water if you include Oso Creek, right? So everything drains off our streets and parking lots into these water bodies. So this helps to raise awareness. You shouldn't be putting stuff down the storm drain. So another thing we've started about a year ago is our Blue Water Task Force. We do water quality testing for bacteria, which indicates, it's an indicator species for other contamination, fecal contamination. There's all kinds of viruses and everything that you can get from dirty water, recreating in dirty water. The state does do water quality testing. It's called the Texas Beach Watch Program. You can look that up and see what the data is on that. But they do their testing on Mondays, and people go to the beach on weekends. So we sample on Thursdays, so we get our test results on Friday afternoon. So you can always look up the Blue Water Task Force thing. And the neat thing is we cooperate with a laboratory at Texas A&M, Dr. Jeff Turner's lab. And so our volunteers grab the samples, but they actually run the tests in their lab. So we don't have to deal with, running a clean lab with volunteers for long term is kind of difficult to do. So that's a great partnership. And we hope to expand this. We're only doing 3 locations right now on the Gulf Beaches area, Packery Channel area, Seawall area, and down by Bob Hall Pier, or the future, once again, Bob Hall Pier. So we hope to expand that as we get more funding. The segue, CAPE is a very important environmental organization, and that's where I met you. So CAPE was formed because of the concern of rampant industrial growth in our area. When you see news about a new facility, they'll talk about, well, this one facility is coming in and they're going to bring X number of jobs to our local economy, right? Usually that claim of the number of jobs is grossly overstated. What people don't really consider are what are the negative impacts that come with that development. Basically because of the Permian Basin and the huge amount of oil and gas that's up there, that they want to get it to market. So they're over the last several years, 5 pipelines were built coming to Corpus Christi, because if you look at the map, we're one of the closest ports to the Permian Basin. As you all know, Corpus Christi, they like to say it, exports more oil and gas than any other port in the United States right now. And because of that huge amount of cheap natural gas, we've got lots of companies that want to come in here and either export that natural gas, like LNG, as an LNG facility, or use it in their processes to make other products, including plastics. And the amount of pollution but that's what you don't hear about in the news, right? Is how much pollution are these guys going to bring? And as an environmental consultant, I can tell you, I've got 25 years plus experience in this. They're bringing lots of pollution. And when the state agencies look at this, TCEQ, they look at each facility as if it's in its own separate bubble, which is not the real world. And so it's a very antiquated approach. And what we are concerned about is cumulative environmental impact, right? We've looked at their permit applications and what they're allowed to emit into the air, or what they're allowed to discharge into the water, and it's quite disturbing. Corpus Christi, one of the reasons I chose to live in Corpus Christi is because of the water. We're not Houston. It's not Texas City, and it's not Pasadena. And I like to think that the air I breathe is clean, and I'd like to think that the water I recreate in is safe, and I like to think that if I catch a fish, I can eat it. So I hope that continues to be the way, So our chapter, our Surfrider Foundation chapter, is one of many groups now in CAPE. There's actually like 23 And it's a coalition, and I'm really proud to be a part of it, that our chapter is a part of it. And I think we've accomplished a lot of great things. Let's see, all right, okay. So this map just shows some of the facilities, or most of the facilities that we're talking about. Some of you might know Errol Summerlin, who is kind of the somewhat leader of CAPE, even though he wouldn't say that. He recently had to move away. His daughter-in-law is gravely ill, and so they had to move up to Maryland. But Errol was a retired lawyer, and he had represented the Hillcrest neighborhood, in the whole port buyout of the housing and things like that. And Errol showed us a map one time with all these, so again, one on the news, you see one facility, you hear about one facility, and then he showed us this map showing, or a similar map showing all these facilities, and it really opened my eyes, and it made me want to be part of this. So not only are we talking about the air pollution and the water pollution, wastewater pollution, and just to give you an example, ExxonMobil SABIC, or what they call Gulf Coast Growth Ventures over in Gregory, that is the world's largest factory that makes the #1 plastic that goes into water bottles. So their wastewater permit allows them to discharge all kinds of things, and just to pick one, oil and grease, they're allowed to put 1,200 pounds of oil and grease into Corpus Christi Bay every day. That's just oil and grease. That's not the multi-syllabic carbon chain stuff that they're, I've worked in industry. I grew up in the oil and gas industry. Like I said, I worked in plastics. I've helped companies do the right thing. But at a certain point, I think that once you start adding all these amounts together, basically those permits are permits to pollute. It really should be concerning. Corpus Christi Bay is not a big bay. It's maybe 12 feet deep in places. It's getting over 50 feet deep in the channels. The water in the bay, depending on what source you look at, takes 1.5 years to 2.25 years to be fully exchanged. We're putting all these things, it's kind of like we're shoving everything under the carpet and hoping that it goes away in a finite body of water. So it's really not a great approach. It's quite antiquated. And so then there's also, and then we're all in one airshed, right? So from the air pollution perspective, I live over by Robert and Ocean over there, and I was walking my dog one winter night, and big clouds were overhead, just kind of like what we got right now. Cheniere's flare was probably 30 feet tall at the time, and I thought, and the wind was blowing directly at my face, and I thought, I wonder what I'm breathing. We're all in one, so yes, most of the time out of the year, the wind blows out of the southeast here, about 2/3 of the year, but the other third of the year, guess where it blows from? The north. And all this stuff's on the north side of the bay. So we are being impacted by this air pollution. Then there's desalination, which has been a big, huge contested issue in our area. These industries are very water thirsty. ExxonMobil SABIC uses, I've heard they're actually using about 15 million gallons of water a day right now. They might be recycling some, I'm not sure, but they were projected to use up to 24 million gallons of water a day. Before these industries came to our area, what we were hearing from the city is, oh, we've got water for the city for the next 75 years, we're good, right? Our city, us over here, we use about 50 million gallons a day, okay? So I'm just talking about one facility that's using potentially up to half of what the entire city uses. So they need water. So desalination became the silver bullet, right? And desalination, there's lots of issues. It's very energy intensive. I've run small desal systems in industry, and it takes 800 pounds per square inch of water pressure to push water through these membranes. So it takes a lot of electricity to run these pumps. Energy, that's like, well, we've got lots of energy here, who cares, right? We got lots of natural gas, let's burn it. So then the other concerns really become taking the water into the plant, and it's called infiltration, and sucking small sea critters into the intake. And then there's the brine discharge of the more salty brine, which to me is the biggest issue. And our chapter my Surfrider Foundation chapter has an official position on this, is that if they want those intake, if they want to do the desalination, they should have the intake and the discharge way out in the Gulf. That's doable, but so far none of them want to do that. They want to discharge all this water into the bay. Currently there are 4 of these facilities that are proposed, and CAPE has done an excellent job at pushing back on that. It's the organizations with CAPE. So for instance, in Port Aransas, it's the Port Aransas Conservancy. They had a contested case hearing, and which is like a court, with state administrative court judges, and they won. And the port who wanted to install this desal plant on Harbor Island right across from Port Aransas appealed it, and they won again. And then TCQ still gave them the permit, but EPA called that into question and said, we don't recognize the permit because we had these concerns that you guys never answered us about. So, it's very concerning to me when a state agency kind of blindly sides with industry. And if you go to any of these contested case hearings or anything like that, look where TCQ is. They're sitting beside the applicant and the people over here. That kind of lets you know how things work. I was actually told at a public hearing for ExxonMobil Savix wastewater permit by a TCQ lawyer, it's very important who you vote for. Yeah, so anyway, so CAPE is asking these hard questions. They're currently, contesting about 15 environmental air quality and water quality permits. And again, they're asking the hard questions so that, so I've heard two things. Well, our elected leaders, they'll take care of it, right? Well, sorry, but they don't, this is very technical stuff, and they don't necessarily know what's going on. 2, I've heard the elected leaders go, well, okay, well, TCQ is going to handle it. Well, okay, well, I don't think so. And so, again, it's up to us to draw light onto these questions and to really think this stuff through. Let's do it right. Water, our air and water are very important, precious resources. And once clean air and clean water are gone, it's very difficult to get them back. And that's been shown in many, many places around the world. So let's take care of what we got. Maybe that is it. Actually, I have one last slide. Let me see here. I don't know if I can get to it now. Happy picture of sand, beautiful sand dunes and everything with flowers in them. We live in a beautiful place. We need to take care of it, and I'll be happy to talk with anybody after the sermon, it's over, and let's work together and protect what we've got. Thank you.